Bonjour et bienvenue. Welcome to Nodapai Channel. Today, I'm going to talk about how to evaluate the medical literatures to pick up good ones. Hi everyone, I'm Takashi, or you can call me Nodapai, which is my nickname, named after my family name. I'm a small, tiny baby researcher in fasting and nutrition science, currently studying both in Kyoto University in Japan and Bordeaux University in France. In this channel, I'd like to tell you the evidence-based knowledge, information, skills, and techniques in fasting and nutrition in order for you to achieve better health or optimal health. But today's topic is more about literature review, that is, how to evaluate the significance or impact of medical literature. Even in only nutritional fields, there are hundreds or thousands of scientific papers newly published each year, so no one can look through all of these papers. You have limited amount of time and energy to review previous papers, so you don't want to waste your time for non-important or meaningless papers. So I will tell you fundamental approaches to assess the impact of medical literatures and how the scientists actually evaluate them. So the level of the content will be intermediate to advanced today. In the first place, I want to admit that I'm not a fancy experienced researcher. I'm just a doctorate student and of course haven't written many papers by myself. As for my background, I had a bachelor's degree in biochemistry at the University of Tokyo and achieved master's degree in public health in Kyoto University. Currently pursuing a PhD in public health and data science. Since I studied epidemiology, biostatistics, and literature review in general, I know a little bit about what is good research and what is good paper, how to critically appraise the medical literatures. So I hope I can give you some useful insight regarding how to evaluate, assess the literatures, and help you save your time as much as possible. So let's back to today's topic, how to evaluate impact or significance of the papers. You don't want to waste your time, but you want to know whether good or not a paper is before you look into it. You want to judge whether you have to read it or not in the first place. How to do that? First of all, my final concrete answer is simple and no fancy one. It's very difficult. It's not that simple. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to assess the quality of the scientific papers or scientific studies. Even experienced researcher cannot finally judge whether good or not the paper is until when he or she read it to some extent. The scientists evaluate literatures in very holistic, comprehensive, and sometimes very personal way, depending on how they think or believe about the topics in their own fields. So I have to say that paper review is literally highly paper dependent process, I would say. It is context dependent, content dependent, domain dependent, and individual dependent or subjective, if you like. But there exist some indicators or approaches you can rely on or consider at least. So let's ask ChatGPT. I put the initial question to the ChatGPT, that is there a consistent metric to measure the reliability or significance of medical research papers on health? How do scientists evaluate these papers actually? And the answer was there are consistent metrics to assess the reliability or importance of medical research papers, but each has its limitations. Scientists typically use a combination of different metrics and qualitative criteria for evaluation below some key metrics and evaluation method. And then first, quantitative metrics. Second, qualitative criteria. And third, points emphasized by scientists. This is just the ChatGPT's response. I would say I basically agree with the ChatGPT's opinion, but I can disagree some of the point. For example, I disagree on this point. They respond that there are consistent metrics to assess reliability, but I believe there is no consistent metrics. There is no consistent metrics. There are several or few indicators to assess the reliability is difficult, but assess the importance of medical research papers, but there is no consistent or consensus metrics or way to assess the importance of medical research papers. So I disagree partly, but basically its answer is very good. So I want to follow these flow to answer our initial question. So first, we have the quantitative metrics to measure paper quality. Basically, the answer is very good. It's very concise and accurate. So you have the impact factor, H index, citation content, and alpha scores to refer to quantitatively. It's all about the impact or importance of the study. It's not about reliability or reproducibility of the scientific study. It's more like how the paper impact our scientific society or general society. So let's look at for impact factor. Impact factor is very famous indicator. It is a journal-based indicator, so it's not a paper-based. It's a journal-based. The scientific paper is published on some specific journals, depending on the domain, field, magnitude of the study or impact of the result of the study. So there are a lot of scientific journals, but the quality or impact or reputation of the journals vary across all the journals. So impact factor is a very famous, well-known, always used indicator of the reputation of the journals. So impact factor is a metric that reflects the influence of the journal calculated based on the average number of citations to the articles published in the journal over the past few years. So let's search for the impact factor. Impact factor is calculated as the total number of citations that each paper get in the previous 2 years divided by the total number of the articles each journal published for previous 2 years. So it means the number of citations that each paper gets for previous 2 years in this journal. So if the impact factor is 1, if some journal of the impact factor of some journal is 1, it means that the papers published in this journal on average have been cited 1 times by other articles. So if IF, impact factor, is abbreviated as IF is 5. If IF is 5, on average, the paper published in this journal cited 5 times, something like that. It's very easily interpreted and very intuitive, right? So impact factor varies among 0 to, how to say, 100, but there's almost no journals which has an impact factor of more than 100. The maximum is like 60 or 80, yeah. And many journals dropped into this category, impact factor 1 to, I would say, 5. So the more than 5 of impact factor means it's a kind of a good journal, because if the all the journal or if the each of the papers on this journal cited more than 5 times, it means it's kind of a good journal. They listed many important journals, I would say. But you have to know that on average means anything, because impact factor is journal based. It does not mean that all the papers published on the specific journal means should be evaluated in the same way. It's not like if the paper published in good journal, all the paper is good. It's not like that. Even in the good journal, sometimes the not important papers will be published. Yeah, it's a case sometimes. Yeah. So you can consider the impact factors as impact of the papers, but you should know it is given to the journals, not the papers, not the each papers. But there is high correlation between the impact or quality of the paper and the reputation or impact factor of the journals. If the study or paper is kind of meaningless and very poorly designed, it won't be listed, it won't be published on the good journal, highly reputed journals. It's impossible. So I want to say that if I split the papers into 3 categories, that is truly high impact papers or medium impact papers, low impact or meaningless garbage papers, in truly high impact papers in this region, in this domain, in this part, there is medium to high correlation between the quality of the paper and the reputation of the journals. Because no garbage journals will not be published on the good journals. By the time the paper published, the paper went through the critical reviews by the several scientists and the strict editors. So it won't happen that very bad studies will be published on the good journals. So there is a medium to high correlation between the quality of the paper and the reputation of the journal itself. And on the other hand, in this field, I mean low impact domains, you can say you won't expect that the good paper is published is bad reputed journals. So there is much more higher correlation between the poor quality of the paper and poor reputation of the journals. So you can judge something like that. So if the paper is published on the highly reputed, high impact factor journals, you can say that it is not a garbage. You don't know it is really truly good paper or truly high impact paper, but you can think it's not a garbage anymore. And likewise, if the paper is published on the very bad journal, maybe you can believe the paper is bad. So there is a high correlation. But in the middle range, the many papers, most of the papers fall into this region, there's no obvious correlation. There's not a high correlation between the impact or quality of the study and the impact factor of the journal. So it's difficult in general. So if it is very good journal, you can rely on it to some extent. If it is very bad, you can just how can I say neglect it, reject it. But for the medium region, in most cases, you cannot judge the quality of the paper or quality of the studies itself by only impact factors, something like that. So that is a limitation, but impact factor has a merit. It allows easy comparison with journal influence. I would disagree because impact factor is very highly domain specific, domain dependent. For example, the medical journal or journals in biology or medicine, biochemistry field tend to have higher impact factor than the journal in mathematics or physics. So it's domain specific and it's dependent on the current trend of the scientific fields. And of course, it's only use recent citation and the recent number of the papers. I mean, 2 years. So it's very depending on the time. So that is the limitation, I think. And of course, you don't want to forget the biggest limitation is it's not a paper specific. It's a journal specific. But actually, you will not read the journal itself. You will read the paper itself, each papers, not all the paper in the journal. So you have to be careful about it. So let's move on to the next indicator. I prefer it better. H index. H index is a measures. H index measures author's productivity. How can I pronounce it? The productivity and the citation impact. And also has an H index of H if they have H paper cited at least H time each. Sorry, let's move on to the impact factor, previous one. I have to show how do you know the impact factor of each journals. It's very easy. You just search impact factor and the journal name. For example, impact factor, American Journal of Public, anything is fine. American Journal of, I would say, clinical nutrition, for example. They shows impact factor of 6.77. Again, it means on average, papers listed, published in this journal got cited more than 6.77 times by another journals, another papers. So it is that's the number says. For example, let's search the Japanese journals, Journal of Epidemiology. This is a Japanese Journal of Epidemiology. It literally means Japanese Journal of Epidemiology. Its impact factor is 4.8. It's kind of good, I think. How good it is though, impact factor. Let's look at the distribution of the impact factors. Yeah, this is better. So most of the papers fall into this category. Impact factor is around 1. So on average, each paper is cited by one another papers. This is kind of average, right? Or 2 or 3. So as I said, maybe more than 3 or 5, more than 5 of impact factor means it is kind of good journal, highly reputed journal. Yeah. And if the impact factor is more than 10, it is really good. It's really good. Really good journals. So the the garbage papers never show up in these journals. Yeah. You can trust that. Something like that. Okay. So you can now know how to get the impact factor of each journals. And it is very basic things, but how to know the journals. If you search for the papers like this, for example, this paper is titled Fasting Molecular Mechanism and Clinical Applications. Here in Pubmed database, this is the journal title, Cell Metabolism. It is always abbreviated, already abbreviated, but this is a journal title. So you can search cell metabolism, impact factor, or in this Pubmed is a search engine for the Medline database, which is basically deal with medical or biological papers. I don't know you can see or not. Maybe I can change the size of the frame. Maybe you cannot see because of my window, but I have the Google extensions, Google extensions of usual. Let's see, this one, Pubmed impact factor. I have a Google extension, so if install it, you can see here the impact of the journals, the paper published in. So here, cell metabolism has impact factor of 27.29. It's really high. It's really high. So this is a kind of good journal, but be careful. It is very domain specific. Actually, the biological field, they tend to have a higher impact factor because they are more likely to easy cited. And this article, this paper is a review article. This is review article. It's not the original investigation. It's not a single. It is not a single experiment. So it is easily get cited by other papers, like the new, for example, by recent review published 5 years after. So you should know review articles or systematic review articles tend to have a higher impact factor. Okay. So let's move back onto H index. H index means H index is an author researcher-based indicator. It represents how can I say, how significantly the author contributed to the scientific society. H means both how many papers they wrote and how many times each paper got cited. So for example, if H index is 5, the author wrote 5 papers which is cited more than 5 times. Each 5 papers should have been cited more than 5 times. For example, the H index is, if H index is 50, the author have written 50 papers, and at the same time, each 50 papers got cited more than 50 times. So it's taking into account both the number of the papers and the number of the citations each paper gets. So it is also intuitive and it's meaningful, right? Do you think so? Because the author, in order to get a higher H index, the author should write many papers and many highly impacted, highly cited papers, something like that. For example, let's search for one of my supervisors, the Japanese researcher in Japan. Do you know the Google Scholar? Do you use the Google Scholar? It's very useful to search for the scientific literatures. You put author's name, Iwami Taku, which is one of my one is my supervisor, Professor Taku Iwami. Here you find Taku Iwami, and here, sorry, it's Japanese, but it says that H index is 55 overall, and since 2020, in recent years, his H index 42. And at the same time, it listed the highly cited papers. For example, first one is cited more than 1,000 times. It's really highly cited. It's published in the Circulation, one of the highly reputed journal in the how can I say cardiology field or circulatory system science fields. And this is also highly cited, more than 600 times, and it is published on New England Journal of Medicine. This is the top journal in medical field, or I can say the top journal in scientific field in general. So, he has a lot of publications, more than hundreds, and he has a lot of publication, which is cited many times. So 55 means he have written 55 good papers, which is cited more than 55 times. So something like that. So even if they also published very highly cited journal, for example, if author wrote just one article, which was cited 100 times, they also still got have just one H index because they also only wrote one papers. So just one paper with a lot of citation doesn't lead to higher H index. Likewise, if the author wrote hundreds of papers, many papers, if if the paper is not cited many times, they also still ended up the low H index. For example, if each of hundreds papers was not cited one times, he gets 0 in the H index of 0. So it's very good that the H index take into account the number of papers and number of the citations of each papers. So it's very good. Actually, finally, you can evaluate the papers, judge the papers by authors. In this field, the author has a significant role. Of course, the research has a significant role in conducting good research. And actually, especially in the small specific field, small specific domain of the science, for example, like nutrition science or fasting, science is fasting, there are few authors, there are few good researchers who can conduct good research, good study, who can write good paper. So if you find a good researcher you can trust, or you want to follow, how can I say, support, or you want to learn from him or her, you can just follow them. You can just judge the quality of the paper, quality of the study by the author's name, author's reputation, author's contribution, previous contribution of the scientific field. I think it's the easiest way and the best way to quickly judge the quality of the scientific papers. The quality of the papers or quality of the studies really depend on the author or study team, study laboratories itself. Conducting scientific research is very human dependent, human specific. It's depending on the skills and the expertise and the experiences research conductor or principal investigators. So each index is kind of a very useful indicator, qualitative indicator. Sorry, quantitative indicators. But if it also has a pros and cons, the demerit of the H index is disadvantages in early career researchers or emerging fields. It's true. Because to obtain higher H index, you have to write a lot of articles, which is cited a lot. So the experience does matter, right? Actually, in scientific field, experiences does really matter. It's not like startup science or IT ventures. There's no fancy lucky to be good researcher. You have a significant amount of experiences, contributions, and tips, hard times to be a good researcher. So each index or having a specific author name is kind of a good way to judge scientific papers. Okay, let's move on to the next one, citation count. It's almost the same because impact factor is calculated based on the number of citation, and the H index is also considered citation count. So how many times the paper is cited is the crucial factor, the key factor to evaluate the quality of the paper, or is at least the quality, evaluate the impact of the papers. The impact or significance of the paper is different from the quality of the paper or quality of study itself. Maybe I will come back to it later on. Anyway, the number of citation does matter. You can check, you can know the impact factor in Google Scholar. No, sorry, at the scientific count, the number of citation. Anyway, either is fine, but just search for fasting. Okay. I found the previous one. So this paper cited by 1,800. It's really highly cited. Sorry, this is Japanese, but this is the citation count or number of the citation. It's very easy. If you search for some title of the paper, they show the citation count. So it's also very easy way to evaluate the impact of the papers. What is the pros? It measures direct impact of specific paper. Yeah, it's very direct indicator. What is cons? Not always indicative of quality. Can be influenced by the size of the field or trending topics. I already mentioned that it's different from quality. The impact is different from quality, and it's depend on the domain and the trend. But still, it is a basic indicator of the papers. And nowadays, this is more current. This is more, yeah, nowadays one, altometric score. It is more like how many the paper is cited in internet medias like SNS, Twitter, Facebook, or um, internet blogs, news media, something like that. It's a more general indicator of the significance or impact of the paper. Again, I'm gonna show you my browser, and I have, I'm gonna say bookmark on Google, and this is a Google, how can I say it? Bookmark application extension. And if I press the altometric it in some pages regarding scientific papers, they show the altometric metrics. Sorry, let's try again. Can you see that? Yeah, here. It shows these papers has altometric score of 973. This is the sum. It is the sum of the citation count of the many medias, including SNS and news media, blogs, something like that. So it represents the more like impact to general public, general society, especially in internet, on the internet. So, it is only recently that people care about the scientific findings, scientific papers in general public. So it is getting more popular, more and more popular. But yeah, anyway, this is another indicator to consider how big the paper have the impact to the general public, something like that. But for the moment, I would recommend the number of citation to rely on, because there is no strong correlation between the quality of the study in terms of the scientific validity and these altometric scores. For example, I want to get the altometric score of this paper, this paper has an altometric score of 1,500. It's really high, but it's comparable with the previous one, which is previous one. Previous one. Previous one, that is fasting, molecular mechanism, and clinical application. It has a 900, more than 900 of the ultimate score. On the other hand, this paper published Cells has comparative number of the ultimate score. Actually, this paper is so-called Yamanaka paper. Professor Yamanaka in Kyoto University got a Nobel Prize by this paper, but if you consider it, it's still low. The impact he it contributes to our societies are way much more bigger than this number, I would say. So this is just an indicator. It does not necessarily mean that you can rely on this number to really know how big the impact of the paper it is to the scientific community. So be careful about that. So these are the quantitative metrics to measure paper quality. So you know that we have 4 indicators, but none of them is perfect. They have limitation. They have merit and demerit. So you have to think about it carefully, and it depends on you which indicator you rely on. Well, maybe you don't want to rely on. You cannot rely on. You just consider it to some extent. So let's move on to another section. These are the quantitative metrics, and the next is qualitative criteria. In terms of literature review and the critical appraisal of the scientific studies, qualitative assessment of each paper or each study design and method, including statistical method, is way more important than previous indicators. True appraisal or true critical appraisal of the medical literature is more like qualitative, not a quantitative. What is a qualitative? For study design, does matters. Do you know the study design? Maybe you have heard about the pyramid or hierarchy of evidence. In clinical studies, there are several range, or I would say hierarchy of the evidence level of the study design. You know, the belowest is expert opinion. Expert opinion is least level or least evidence level in this hierarchy. Each case report is still lower, and randomized, if you have a randomized control trial, the level of evidence would get higher, and if you have a systematic review and meta-analysis of many randomized control trials, the evidence would be strengthened, hardened much more. And finally, you've got medical guidelines, which incorporates a lot of RCTs, a lot of systematic reviews, a lot of meta-analysis and other studies, something like that. So you should know the hierarchy of evidence. Yeah, this is kind of very advanced one, but you should know a lot of things about study design. You should know the difference between just the randomized trials, difference in between randomized trials and randomized control trials. And you should know the difference between randomized control trial and double-blind randomized control trials. So there are a lot of study designs, and you can consider it. And the next one is appropriateness of the statistical method. This is a way more advanced one, and I think it's not the scope of this video. Actually, even I am not a specialist of this one. Only the biostatistician can truly appraise the statistical method of each study. They can consider each statistical method or statistical test or sample size and how to code it, something like that. So this is not the scope of this video, but finally you have to understand the statistical method. For the ethical considerations, it doesn't add much. It doesn't mean anything because nowadays all the clinical trials should consider ethical point and should obtain informed consent. So all the studies should achieve it. And for the reproducibility, you cannot judge unless you look through the papers. So maybe you cannot judge this point before you read it. Yeah, this is all, of course, reproducibility is a key factor of validity of scientific method, but you need experience and the skills and knowledge to judge it. So qualitative criteria is more important, but it's more difficult in general. So you should study and you should become expertise with it. One thing I can say is that one thing I can say in general is that the length or how can I say the proportion of the method does matter. I mean, in scientific research, method is the most important. Do you think so? Do you believe so? Actually, it is. The science, the method is the most important. Actually, science itself is method. Science is methodology. It's all about method. So method is science itself. So uh, it is a method that determine the quality of the study. So the authors, good papers should have significant amount of method section, right? If they write really small portion of method, it means they didn't put emphasis on method. It means it should compromise the validity of the study because science is all about method. So method section should be kind of long, kind of significant amount. So you can if you look at the paper, you can judge how can I say how method section is used, how method section occupy the most of the part of the papers. It's not that the longer text, longer method section is better, but you need a significant amount of text to be a good paper. So you can think about it. And the third one is point emphasized by scientists, scientist points of view. Actually, this is also very important because the quality of study really depends on the authors or study research team itself. So it's more like it's really independent specific, researcher dependent. So as I mentioned, reputation of the journal does matter, impact factor, and not other reputation, uh, how can I say, irrelevant, regardless to impact factor is also important. So there are hidden knowledge that which journal is actually good or bad because it is a human that making or published in journals. So the quality of the journal or the quality of the paper in the journal depends on the skills or professionalism of the editors or reviewers of the journals. So it says that peer review process. It does matter, but almost all the good journals have a peer review system. So it doesn't tell much to you. I only can say that if the journal is not peer reviewed, it's meaningless. You can skip it. You just want to read peer reviewed journals. Yeah, that is a basic. So it is a necessary. Peer review process is necessary, not an indicator. It's necessary. For the novelty and relevance of the research, this is also qualitative, not quantitative, and you cannot judge at a glance. You have to look through it. You have to read it carefully to know the relevance of the research and to know how novel the research is. You should have the expertise in this field, and you should understand and know a lot about context of your domain, your field. So it is really advanced one. Author reputation track record. This is similar to the H index. This is what you can consider it when you want to judge and decide the papers you want to read. It's all about authors. It's all about researchers. So you should know about the authors, who is good, who have a good contributions, who have a good reputation, which team is reading this field, scientific field, something like that. It sounds complicated and it sounds difficult, but it's actually not that difficult, because if you have a specific field of interest, there are not so many good authors. You just follow several authors, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and not that much. For example, in fasting, I've known several researchers, and they are always cited. They are always mentioned in every articles because fasting field is very small world. So there are few good researchers inside it. Actually, there are not many good researchers in this fasting field, unfortunately. So it's very easy to find a good author to follow. Away from the fasting field, for example, nutritional field or anything is fine, other field. Maybe if you look through tens or hundreds of papers, you will know who is good and which team is leading this field. So it's not that complicated. So all you have to do is find a good author to follow. Finally, the caution is, it is essential to evaluate research papers holistically. Yeah, as I said, holistically, considering the study design, context, and reproducibility, rather than relying solely on metrics like impact factor or citation count. Yeah, it's true. But if you want to consider the quantitative indicators, impact factor or citation count, especially citation count and the H index is useful. And scientists critically examine the detail of the study, including methodology, interpretation of the result, and potential biases. Yes, it's true. It is. Yeah, it is true. It is the value of ourselves. Conclusion: while there are useful metrics, evaluating papers' reliability and importance requires a comprehensive assessment of its methodology, context, and reproducibility. Yeah, this is my conclusion. Thank you. Thank you, ChatGPT. And yeah, there are several things I can add. You can judge the papers by seeing its figures. In good papers, the figures tend to be good. The figure should be concise and clean, easy to interpret, and nice. Yeah, in good papers, the figures tend to be professional, more easy to interpret, more nice, I would say. So you can judge by figures. It's also journal dependent. For example, study reports have a nice, fancy graphical abstract. So it's really depends on the journals. And for example, this is Yamanaka paper who won the Nobel Prize. If you look at the original paper, you see the paper and it doesn't seem super paper at the first glance, right? So you cannot judge appearance of the paper. And if you look at the figure, it's really good, concise, but it's not that fancy. It's not sophisticated design, right? Yeah, it's not so fancy, not wonderful, not so beautiful, right? So it depends. It really depends. It really depends. But you can consider it. Also, if you can read funding or acknowledge section, you might be able to know how much money the study cost. And the money does matter. I don't want to say the more expensive the study costs, better the quality is. It's not like that. It's not like if you put more money, the study will be better. It's not like that, but it is true that if you want to gain a lot of money for study, you have to be able to write a good protocol, good planning of the study. It's really competitive to fundraising for the studies. It's really highly competitive. If you cannot design a good study, you won't be able to get high grant, expensive grant. The quality of the study is determined by the author and determined by the method, actually. It's not determined by the result itself. So the quality of the study is determined before the study is conducted. So whether the study got granted or not does matter. Yeah, that's all for me. Thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you enjoy a little bit, don't forget to like the video, press the like button, and please subscribe my channel so you won't miss my updates. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir, à bientôt. Bisous. See you next time. Hope to see you soon. Thank you very much. どうもありがとうございました。明日。明日。うっす。うっす。うっす。